Hi everybody, Tyler here. I'm standing in the exact spot where Al Pacino said his famous Attica line in Sidney Lumet's 1975 classic Dog Day Afternoon. Now right behind me, this is where the bank was, and they actually filmed inside this building right here. It looks like it's been converted to apartments, but back in 1975, this was an old warehouse, and they actually built the set inside. It was not a real bank.
I needed an empty building so we could build the bank inside the building and something empty across the street. So the requisites were very needy, and we found it like that.
They constructed a set inside, so they were able to make it so that they could move the walls away when they wanted to get a different angle. So it actually looked so real, it looked so much like a real bank that people actually were walking in and trying to open accounts in the bank, and they had to tell them, you know, this is actually not a real bank, right?
Closing time. Want in?
Yes, sir.
So the main difference that you'll notice, the way the street looks between 1975 and today, is all these trees here. There were no trees in the movie. It was all completely clear. The bank and stuff was obviously there, and it was all painted white. You'll see in these bay windows up on top there that they had their production offices up there, so they were actually able to work on the script and stuff like that, pre-production, all that kind of stuff, and then come right back down into the bank and film the scenes. So Lumet actually decided to film inside this building, construct a set in there, because he wanted to be able to see out the window and onto the street, where there was the police, the crowd, and all the spectators. You can see across the street there's still a barbershop there. It looks like it's not the same barbershop, but it's still a barbershop nonetheless. And you can see that the actual facade of the building is pretty much the same as it was in 1975. And if you look at the building to the left, there you can see there used to be a fire escape. There used to be a fire escape there, which was removed, but it does appear in the film. So Moretti and all the confrontations took place right here on the street, right here on this sidewalk where I am standing right now, and right here is the bank. Perhaps the most important reason why Lumet chose to film the interiors inside this actual building was that he was able to move seamlessly from interior to exterior. They were able to come right out the front door with the camera and come right out to all of the police, Moretti, the spectators, and of course the barbershop whenever they needed to.
Sonny!
Sal!
He's serious! Sonny, he means it!
Sal!
He means it!
It's all right. It's all right.
And this street is actually on a bus line, so you can see this bus right here, which complicated things for the filming, but the city actually rerouted the buses one street over, so they were able to not have their shoot disrupted. So they were able to move seamlessly from interior to exterior during the shoot, but they actually shot all of the exteriors first, and they did that in continuity. And then they went in and did the interiors in continuity. So there were a couple of shots that they were able to do that they did during the exterior shooting days, where they went into the building and came out and stuff like that, where the camera actually comes out the front door, looks around, and you see all of the crowd and everything. Since it was all based on a true story, Lumet felt obligated to present it as such, and it affected the way he shot the film. They didn't use lights for a lot of the scenes. The interiors were fluorescent lights, they just added more to get an exposure. If they needed a fill light for a close-up, they would just use a lower wattage fluorescent light. Because they were not using a real bank, the production designer was able to choose where to install the emergency lights for when the police cut the power, and they augmented them to be brighter so that the camera could get an exposure. But you'll see that it's still very dark in those scenes, and Lumet wanted it that way to keep it realistic. This building behind me, the one with the white front, it's actually almost exactly the same as it was in 1975. Now, this is where the start of the bank was, and you can see these bay windows up on top here are pretty much exactly the same as they were back in 1975 as well. They are a different color, but it's a very recognizable location. You can obviously tell that you are in the spot where they filmed Dog Day Afternoon. For the exterior shots, they used only natural lighting, and that includes the night shots. They used the same police lights that they had in the film to light the scenes, and they were actually augmented to be slightly bigger than normal police lights. And they chose this used to be all painted white, and they chose a building with white paint on it specifically so that they could bounce the light off of the front of the building to light the scenes. So you'll see in the scene where Sonny is saying goodbye to his mother, she's actually only being lit by the light being bounced off of the building and onto her face. And the crowd was in this intersection here, and you'll see the streetlights, they actually reinforced the streetlights to be much brighter so that they could get the crowd lit up for when they had shots of the crowd during the night scenes. This was all shot on film, obviously, and they needed to get an exposure, so they had to make sure that there was enough light. This intersection behind me is where one part of the crowd was situated. This is actually where Leon first comes up from across the bridge in the police car, and he gets out right around here. And they went through painstaking measures to make sure that the continuity was correct with the crowd. They even went as far as making sure that each crowd member knew what side of the block they were going to be on. And what's even cooler is that the sound man actually made sure to have the right side of the crowd coming out of the right channel of the speaker and the left side coming out of the left channel of the speaker. So this barbershop behind me is actually the same barbershop. It's owned by different people now, but they actually shot all of the scenes for the police headquarters in the barbershop in this actual building. And that includes Leon's phone conversation, the stuff with Moretti, all of that was shot right here. And if you look right out here, they had the police cars set up right over here, and they had the FBI agents, and all of them were right behind here. Straight in front of me is the bank, so it really worked out to have these two locations directly across the street from each other. Okay, so the other crowd was located right over here in this intersection, and they actually hired 300 actors to play the crowd in the movie. Many of them were off-Broadway actors, and over the course of filming, a lot of people showed up, civilians, to just watch the movie being made. And so Lumet actually featured them in the movie as crowd members. So you'll see by the end of the movie, there's like almost 1,200 people there. And so Lumet actually had the actors that were playing the crowd coach and kind of help the civilians, let them know what to chant, how to react to different situations and stuff like that to kind of keep things going with the movie. And a fun fact, one of the gay rights activists that comes out to support Sonny towards the end of the film is a 15-year-old Harvey Fierstein. I haven't been able to locate him though. Another thing that's interesting is that all the police that are featured in the movie are actors. Now they did actually have real police on set just to make sure that the crowd didn't get out of hand while they were filming. But they were not featured in the movie. And the captain of the police, he actually had to go to Lumet and let him know that he was noticing that a lot of the actors playing the police were sitting on the ground, smoking, eating and stuff like that in between takes, and he felt that reflected poorly on the police department, so he had Lumet make sure that none of the actors that were playing the police did that. So what's interesting is that all the police in the movie, they were not able to do that, but all the other extras that were hired on in the movie, they were able to sit on the ground and smoke and all that kind of stuff in between takes. And the main reason for that is because the costumes and stuff were so good that nobody could tell the difference between the actual police that were doing crowd control and the extras that were playing police officers. So they actually did a fair amount of rehearsal inside the bank set in the weeks leading up to the production.
It created a complete world where when you entered that set, the only time you knew you were on a movie set is when you went upstairs to the bank and there was a sort of big open space where there were tables for catering and production offices and what have you. Other than that, when you walked on that street, you thought you were in the street in Park Slope where this event took place.
You can see it's very, very overcast today. It's actually kind of cold out. But when this was filmed, it was actually very cold out. It was supposed to take place in August. It was supposed to be a dog day afternoon. It was supposed to be one of the hottest days of the year. But in fact, they shot it in September and it was very cold out. In fact, so cold that you could see Pacino's breath as he was talking in the exterior scenes. So what they did to counteract this was they had him in between takes put ice cubes in his mouth, and that would lower the temperature of his mouth so that you couldn't see his breath. It would lower his temperature down to being the same temperature as it was outside, so you wouldn't see any steam coming out of his mouth. Now, what is great about this location is that it is essentially two opposing sides, the cops and the robbers, situated across from each other. This works really well structurally because it gives us 3 distinct locations to cycle between: the bank, the street, and the barbershop, to keep the pace of the film without spending too much time in any one place. And nearly every time we return to one of these locations, it is under new and fresh circumstances.